So our studio video series continues here during this 49ers dead week before OTAs and phase 3 next Tuesday. Trey Lance's shot to reclaim the QB1 spot. How real is it? What is Kyle Shanahan actually saying? Let's have an honest discussion because this is a nuanced situation and honest discussions don't appear to be very common online. Kyle Shanahan, of course, talked about this at the Dwight Clark Legacy Series event last week. He actually talked about it at length. So we're going to play some footage from Kyle Shanahan. We're going to take our time with this. We're going to see exactly what Kyle said, and then we can parse through it. We can figure out exactly what he thinks of Trey Lance right now, where he thinks that is headed, and how he stands related to, especially Brock Purdy, obviously. Sam Darnold's been part of the conversation. We already made a video on the Sam Darnold aspect. You might guess what another video later this week is going to be. It's going to be about Brock Purdy. But 49ers QB situation is one of peak nuance. Let's listen to Kyle Shanahan from the Dwight Clark Legacy Series event. The one thing about Shanahan's remarks, if I have to zoom out before playing them and give you an overarching summary, is that he still clearly believes in Trey Lance's ceiling. This is not a situation where Kyle Shanahan's like, oh, this guy's a bust. Let me get him out of the building as quickly as possible. That'd be downright foolish from Kyle Shanahan's perspective because we still don't know about Trey Lance. And yes, that is highly unfortunate. The fact that Trey Lance has been around for 2 seasons now at the NFL level and the 49ers haven't been able to get a firmer gauge on him, that's tough. But it's the truth of the matter, and the 49ers have to adapt their QB behavior, their QB decision-making with that unknown in mind. They didn't expect this to be an unknown variable come 2023, but it is. Thankfully for them, somebody named Brock Purdy stepped onto the scene to take a little bit of that pain away, right? If you would have told people that Trey Lance would still be an unknown variable going into the 2023 season, if that were something that you would have said back in 2021, people would have thought, oh boy, what a disaster for the 49ers. But they got the unexpected find of Brock Purdy, and that's given them some breathing room. There's also uncertainty with Brock Purdy, obviously, due to the sample size and due to the elbow. So you move forward without taking anything for granted. You move forward not knowing if you're going to be alive next week. That's how the 49ers are looking at this, and that's, I think, the overarching theme that we need to keep in mind as we listen to Kyle Shanahan talk about his quarterbacks. This is from the Dwight Clark Legacy Series event last week.
3 overall pick, and just last year he was the starting quarterback going into the offseason, and obviously the starting quarterback week 1. Now, after Brock played as well as he did, you and John Lynch have both said, in essence, he's the leader in the clubhouse. Brock Purdy is. So how should we read that about where Trey is now with the organization?
Yeah, no, I get it.
Okay, so quick pause right here. I'm going to put this up on the screen. When asked about Trey Lance, you just heard Matt Mayoko's question. Kyle Shanahan is going to immediately pivot to talking about Brock Purdy and even Jimmy Garoppolo. However, keep this as an asterisk. This does not necessarily mean that Lance has fallen out of Shanahan's favor. Listen to the answer first before jumping to any conclusions here. But do note that Shanahan first talks about Purdy and Jimmy Garoppolo because the question posed by Matt Mayoko was actually about Trey Lance.
That question, I understand the unusual circumstances of when you trade up for a quarterback with the 3rd pick in the draft, how you're expecting him to be the man for a long time. And we did expect that, and I still believe that he can be. You're also not expecting the last pick in the draft to come in and play at that level. That's why he was our 3rd quarterback, despite how good he did from day 1 to all there. But you're not expecting it. He got that opportunity because of injury. And then he went in for 8 games and won every one, which is the first thing you look at. But then you watch the tape and just try to see why. And it was legit. He played at an extremely high level. I think our team got a lot better when he got in there. And I think his position and every position around it, including our team, and when you go back and watch it, he's a real player. And so when you talk about what does it say about Trey, I just think it's so unfair to Trey. Trey played 1 game this year. What it says about is what Brock did in his 8 games. And what Brock did is really damn good. Now, what does that mean to Trey? Nothing. He's only got 1 game to play. The year before, he got 2 games.
Okay, so Another quick pause right there. You see Kyle Shanahan, he got a little roasted online. Oh, he was asked about Trey Lance and he immediately starts talking about Brock Purdy, a little bit about Jimmy Garoppolo. Guys, he is only telling the truth. The story of the 2022 season is that Trey Lance got hurt in week 2 and the 49ers had to use more quarterbacks, first Garoppolo, then Purdy, to try to get to the finish line. And they didn't even get to the finish line with those guys because both Garoppolo and Purdy did also get hurt. So that was the story of the season, that the 49ers used multiple quarterbacks, and the other quarterbacks not named Trey Lance were more effective than Trey Lance, although it was a very, very small sample for Trey. But that's very, very necessary context that people, for some reason, just want to ignore. Shanahan ended that clip, and I mean, there's going to be more for that clip, but the segment that I just showed you, he ended saying, it doesn't mean anything for Trey because we've only seen Trey for a couple games at this point. That remains true. People do not like when there is a gap in knowledge. It's the human condition to want to fill the gap with assumptions, fill the gap with something so that it's more than nothing, right? People don't like floating around in nothing. They don't like floating around in uncertainty. But the problem is that's exactly where the Trey Lance saga lies right now. It lies in a whole bunch of uncertainty. So when you look at that and you look at it in the terms of uncertainty and filling the gaps moving forward, you could say that the 49ers are still at square one with Trey Lance. When they drafted him in 2021, when they used all that capital, they did it because they wanted to take a big swing and they wanted to see if Trey Lance could reach his ceiling. Well, in my opinion, it still seems that Kyle Shanahan is in the same boat 2 years later. They've just been stuck in neutral for 2 years. But listen to Kyle Shanahan talking about Trey Lance. And this becomes, I don't think it's effusive in praise, but this might surprise people who were thinking about this in binary ways. They said, oh, well, Trey Lance, I mean, Kyle Shanahan's not talking about him because he's hurt. He must be on the shelf. He must be on the trade block. No, that's not the case. Listen to Kyle keep on talking about Trey Lance right now and his belief in his ceiling.
We took Trey thinking he would get an opportunity to play more because we knew where we were going to go eventually. That didn't happen. Not because of anything against Trey. He wasn't quite ready his first year, and Jimmy was still on our roster. And Jimmy is a very good quarterback. It's not easy to beat out. And then we made the move to Trey. We were able to get Jimmy as a backup at a very cheap price, just luckily, in case something bad happened. But we were ready to go with Trey. And Trey was going to go through a lot that year. And I believe he would have got to a level that did some similar stuff. He missed that off, and Brock came in and did it. Now, I truly believe Trey can go do that. But Brock's already done it. And that's a very good thing for us to have. And that's not something that I got to make a statement about. That's something that our players know from watching the silent tape. That's something
I truly believe Trey could do that. What's Kyle Shanahan talking about? You have to put this into context. He's obviously discussing emulating Brock Purdy's performance, but I think that we have to emphasize and we have to, put some perspective on just how good Brock Purdy's performance was. So here's 49ers quarterback efficiency under Kyle Shanahan. Purdy, Garoppolo, and Lance, their 2022 performances are up here. Red is bad, blue is good. Lance, over the tiny sample, was not good last year. Atrocious completion percentage over expectation, negative 17.3. I get it. Monsoon, all this, all that. Adjusted net yards per attempt was also lousy. DVOA, terrible, negative 42.3%. But Shanahan talking about what Purdy did last year. And Purdy was really good. Both he and Garoppolo were at 7.6 adjusted net yards per attempt. Those are elite numbers. The 49ers offense was really churning with both of these quarterbacks. Garoppolo, a bit better DVOA. Purdy, better EPA per play. So the advanced metrics are kind of seesawing on who they like better. Garoppolo and Purdy, essentially the same success rate. Garoppolo a bit better taking care of, Purdy a bit better taking care of the football. Accuracy generally even. I mean, it is amazing when you look at the advanced metrics between these two quarterbacks and you see them relatively mirror each other in Kyle Shanahan's system. Obviously, Shanahan is really, really impressed with those numbers, Purdy's and also Garoppolo's, but especially Purdy's, because Purdy stepped in there and did that as a rookie, as pick number 262. And notice that he said, I believe Trey could have done that had he had the whole season to develop. I think that's one of the key lines in Kyle Shanahan's entire 32-minute interview up there on the stage at the California Theater in San Jose last week. The 49ers, don't forget the 49ers' overarching vision entering 2021. They knew that Trey Lance was raw. They knew that it would be a growing pains kind of situation, but they thought that if they surrounded him with the talent that they have, and we know that they have a lot of it, and we knew that they thought that if he had the full season to develop, that by the end of it, which is when Brock Purdy came in for those 8 games, by the end of it, Trey Lance could be humming along. Maybe not quite like Brock Purdy was humming along, but that was unexpected. But he'd be humming along. And by humming along, well, you can see right here. This is impressive. These numbers right here for Brock Purdy were awesome. If Kyle Shanahan thinks that Lance would have been able to get remotely close to that, well, all of a sudden, the 49ers investment starts looking a little bit better in Trey Lance, right? But it's still a question mark. Right now, we still don't know if Trey Lance can approach that. Kyle Shanahan is just hypothesizing. He still thinks that Trey Lance might be able to get there. So why don't we listen in a little bit further to Kyle Shanahan talking about Trey Lance, because he's going to get to some more details, some more good context as to whether or not Trey can actually stand a good chance of reaching the level the 49ers need him to reach.
See every day when we watch these 8 games, we know what we have. I truly believe with my heart what Trey can be. It still takes time and you got to go do it. But in the meantime, we have a guy sitting there who already has done it. And that's a very good thing for the Niners. That's a very good thing for Brock. And you know what? I see it as a very good thing for us. I'll let it play out and we'll see if Brock gets healthy. We'll see how much ground Trey can gain in the meantime through practice.
We'll see how much ground Trey can gain in the meantime. So when we, the question that titles this video is, how real is Trey Lance's shot at 49ers QB1? The 49ers have been clear, and this is the correct position to take, that Brock Purdy's the leader in the clubhouse. But when Kyle Shanahan's saying stuff like that, we'll see how much ground Trey Lance can make up. There is a real shot here for Trey Lance to make up ground, especially since Purdy is currently hurt. The coach is talking about it. The coach has always been honest in these kind of situations. I can't think of a time when Kyle Shanahan hasn't, just shot it straight with the quarterback position. I mean, go back to 2021. Everybody tried calling Kyle Shanahan a liar in the offseason for saying that Jimmy Garoppolo was likely to start. Everyone minus this channel, maybe a couple other people. Oh, boy, they invested so much in Trey Lance. He must be the guy. It's like, no, use your common sense. Trey Lance is coming from North Dakota State. He hasn't played in over a year, essentially, right? He played that one game in the COVID year. He's not going to step into a National Football League team and start from week 1. People were idiotic that offseason to think that. It was completely preposterous, and it was from the local media all the way to the national media. Kyle Shanahan was telling you the whole time what was going on. Jimmy Garoppolo is going to start. Trey Lance is going to try to mix in. And then, obviously, we had the Trey Lance finger injury, the hairline fracture on the pinky. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. But that, just long story short, that derailed the 49ers' plan of mixing Trey Lance in. So it was Jimmy's year. Long story short, it was Jimmy's year. Then it was Trey's year in 2022, just as Kyle Shanahan said from the very start. So he's been very straightforward about all this. The straightforwardness has now extended to him saying Brock Purdy is the leader in the clubhouse, but we'll see how much ground Trey Lance can make up this offseason. All right, so let's keep on listening. That's not really a segue because it's the main point of this thing. How real is Trey Lance's shot at quarterback 1? Kyle Shanahan just answered it. It is real, but Brock Purdy is ahead of him. Let's keep on listening.
And things like that. And when Brock comes back and is healthy, we'll see where we're at. But the one thing that we did we went into last year not knowing if we could have a high starting caliber quarterback because no one on our roster had done it before. And we believed someone could. That's why we were rolling the dice. And then we ran into a very good backup. And Trey missed that opportunity. And then Jimmy came in and helped us for a while because he was proven. Then Brock got the same opportunity Trey started with. When it was all said and done, because if someone got to play, we know we have a quarterback who's done it out there at a high level in the NFL who we can win with. I also believe we have 2 more on our roster. All right, strongly. But one other guy showed it. So let's see how it plays out. And I could say that I'll make the decision, but I really don't look at it that way. I look at it as the players make the decision. And it all comes down to the silent tape. And I'll articulate it for you if you ask me a question. But it's going to go back to what we see on that tape. And usually the answer's right there.
The players will make the decision. That means that Trey Lance has a chance to compete this offseason. Brock Purdy is going to have a chance to compete as soon as he returns from the elbow injury, although he has the lead based on pedigree so far. It's a meritocracy in Brock Purdy. point blank has done more than Trey Lance in the NFL. You know who else has done more than Trey Lance in the NFL? Sam Darnold. So I made the video about Sam Darnold the other day. You cannot discount Sam Darnold. If anything, you pit him and Trey Lance together right now. They're both number 3 overall picks. Darnold has more experience. Darnold played better over that 6-game stretch to close last season than anything Trey Lance has sniffed yet at the NFL level. But again, we have the sample size problem. Sample size and Trey Lance's lack of efficiency. Put it up on the screen here. Lance in 21 actually had good adjusted net yards per attempt, bad EPA per game. So these stats were volatile. It was high in some metrics, low in others. Normally, it's more consistent across the board, but you see some dark blue and you see some dark red. This tells me the story for Trey Lance last season in 2021. Success rate, which is the percentage of plays that yield a positive EPA, expected points per play, was really low. 40% is not good. Yet, the DVOA and the adjusted net yards per attempt were high, which showed you that it was a boom or bust component. You saw the game against Houston, terrible first half, good in the second half. The game against Arizona, right? It wasn't great. He ran 16 times. But now we have some answers as to why. And again, I'm going to get to that in a little bit, but he was playing with the chipped pinky on his throwing hand. Especially in that game against Arizona, it hurt Trey Lance. So you look at where he's been, and it's just not a big sample. It's volatile. It was straight up bad in 2022, but we just need more. And once you have more, you're going to be able to predict with some confidence which way Trey Lance is heading. Again, people hate I don't know. Those 3 words seem to terrify football fans, but that's exactly where the 49ers stand with Trey Lance right now. The sample size is just too small, so we can talk about the lack of efficiency all we want, and that puts him behind somebody like Brock Purdy. It might even put him a little bit behind Sam Darnold to begin things, just because Darnold has a pedigree that has a little bit of efficiency. He delivered over the final 6 games of last season, but it's not a permanent spot for Trey Lance because the sample size needs to grow before any permanence can dictate what the 49ers view of this situation. All right, back to Shanahan. Let's listen because he's about to divulge one of the biggest pieces of information about Trey Lance that we previously didn't know the extent of. And now that Shanahan has revealed it and you're about to listen to it, we can fill in some gaps in 2021, and that helps us better understand how the 49ers are going to approach the situation of Trey Lance's development.
What about it's early right now, but how's Trey coming along right now in these early?
Trey's been awesome. I mean, the one thing that I think was such a tough challenge for Trey his first year when he broke that finger and it healed but didn't heal right. He spent a whole year throwing without a bent finger, which changes everything, which shows the toughness of the kid that he never complained about it. He just tried to adjust so he could be out there. And then the whole offseason, he spent trying to fix that and get that back. So by the time we got him, he was a little bit behind. He had spent a whole offseason away from us, just trying to rehab his grip so he could get back to throwing normal. And then we got with him, and now everything goes. And yeah, he got better through all of that. But then he got hurt, and he got to sit and watch Brock. He got to watch Jimmy. He got to sit and think about the ups and downs he had preparing for the moment, and actually not go through the moment. And now we get to this offseason. Yes, he had an ankle, but the ankle was healed pretty fast. But he had no other injuries. So as soon as the season ended, Trey was working in all aspects, not trying to re-get his grip, just trying to throw like he always has before he got hurt. And now once his feet were healthy, he was able to get such a better base in these last 2 months that I think Trey's the best that we've had him right now. And yeah, we got to get in OTAs and practice, but when you just watch his feet, his timing, how he's throwing the ball, he's in such a better place now than he was last year at this time. And I know he's coming off a big injury, but it's because he was healthier this year. Even though last year was a little injury with a hairline fracture on a pinky, but it healed the wrong way. And this year it's a bad break on the ankle, but it healed right like most of them do. And now I just see him in such a better place, and now we'll present to him some football and stuff when we get to OTAs. We're allowed 9 of them, and we'll put players out there, and we'll see how he's playing. We'll let him and Sam roll, and then we'll evaluate all that, and we'll take 40 days off, and we'll see how we want to lay it out in training camp.
So I took a quick peek at the comment section. We're going to get into the discussion about the broken finger. Somebody right here. Trey didn't have a terrible first half against Houston. Trey Lance's rating in the first half versus Houston was, I'm going to put this up in the comment section. You can check it in the comment section. So somebody took exception to this. Trey Lance's rating in the first half versus Houston was 67.8. That's objectively terrible. But on the game tape, it was objectively bad. He was missing Kyle Juszczyk on flat patterns. I mean, overthrowing 5-yard passes. The accuracy wasn't there. Now, there are reasons. It sounds like the finger injury might have still been a play there late in that season, and he got way better in the second half. The point is that there's been volatility with Trey Lance. Some of these people, I mean, it's weird. It's downright weird. People either love Trey Lance or they hate him. And the people that love him can't grasp that, oh my God, this guy has looked bad for a lot of the time. And the people that hate him can't grasp the fact, well, the sample is small and there's probably a reason why he's looked bad. So the truth is still nowhere to be found, right? The actual long-term truth, the prognostication of where Trey Lance is going to go, we don't know yet. That's the key. So get out of your tribalistic camps. Get out of this, oh, I love Trey Lance, or oh, I hate Trey Lance. That's not where the truth is going to be found. It's going to be found in sitting back, letting him compete, seeing what he can do. Exactly what the 49ers wanted him to do back in 2021. But then this happened. The broken finger happened, and that was what Kyle Shanahan was talking about at the end of that clip. So this is what, week 3 of the 2021 preseason, Levi Stadium against the Raiders. Just remember how fascinating that was in the lead up to the game. The 49ers were running a dual quarterback system at practice. They were putting Jimmy Garoppolo in, yanking him out, putting Trey Lance in mid-drive, swapping quarterbacks multiple times. They carried that into the first drive of the Raiders game. Might have even gone into the second drive of the Raiders game, although I do think they wanted to preserve Jimmy Garoppolo. He ran for a touchdown in that preseason game, took some contact. It wasn't something that Kyle Shanahan wanted to see. Anyway, in that first half against the Raiders in the preseason, that's when Trey Lance hit his finger off of somebody's helmet, a Raiders player's helmet. And that's when the fracture that we're talking about, the hairline fracture on the pinky, the fateful fracture occurred. From that point on, the 49ers did not run the same, the two quarterback offense with the same type of zeal. They did run it on one play in the first drive of the Detroit game. Lance came in through the first touchdown of the season to Trent Sherfield. And they ran it at the end of the first half against the Packers. Lance ran for a touchdown, left pylon, hell of a block by Trent Williams, just tossing defensive back about 5 or 10 yards backwards. It was a Hulk prodigious strength display from Trent Williams. So that's all that we really saw, though, of Trey Lance in that second quarterback role, in that let's alternate with Jimmy Garoppolo role. We saw him play against Arizona in week 5, but that was after Jimmy got hurt, and Trey ran 16 times in that game. It didn't look like they really trusted him to pass, and now we have the explanation. After he broke his finger, it didn't heal right. He wasn't able to bend the pinky on the right hand, and that's his throwing hand. And it took months for Trey Lance to get back into a good rhythm. You heard Kyle Shanahan say it. His base, his release, his mechanics. The mechanics are the thing that's, the biggest missing puzzle piece for Trey Lance. All of that was behind the 8 ball for a long time because of this injury. So you could essentially have thrown 2021 out the window when it came to proper mechanical development for Trey Lance because of the broken finger. And he didn't get it hurt on a running play. He got hurt on a passing play. He hit his finger on somebody's helmet. That's just bad luck in the preseason of all places. Bad luck in 2021. Finally heals, ready to go for 2022. That is when the monsooning at Chicago happens. And then, of course, the ankle injury in week 2 against Seattle. So second season of development down the drain. So we're still in the same spot entering 2023 as we were entering 2021. And it's important to take note of how damaging this broken finger was, because it explains why the work that needed to get done behind the scenes in 2021 really couldn't get done. I mean, we know that Trey is smart. This is something I talked about leading up to the draft. This is the guy that goes with the football to where Kyle Shanahan wants the football to be. Shanahan loved Lance's pro-style tape at North Dakota State. He loved his decision-making. Didn't throw picks at North Dakota State, and always, not always, but more often than not, made the right read in an offense that emulated what NFL teams do. So we know that Trey Lance is smart. We obviously know that he's physically gifted. Was he, faster at the FCS level than he is at the NFL level relative to the defenses? Of course. So the 49ers had to make a bit of a projection. Did they think that he could get to the edge all the time in the NFL based on his FCS tape? Maybe. It's obviously hard to make that projection. Is he a little bit slower than they thought based on his FCS tape? Maybe. But the overarching point is they thought that he was going to be able to win from the pocket, right? Speed, whatever. They knew that he had the athleticism to extend plays. He still has that athleticism. That hasn't been disproven yet. Regardless of whether or not he's a little bit slower than they thought he was coming out of North Dakota State, the end point was always going to have to be, for success, it was always going to have to be Trey Lance delivering from the pocket. And this broken finger has slowed the development from the pocket for Trey Lance. It scuttled plans in 2021, and of course, the broken ankle scuttled those plans in 2022. That brings us to where we are right now. By the way, I had a text title for this, didn't even put it up on the screen. Shame on me. But where we are right now is Shanahan still believing in Lance's ceiling, but he's got to see it. And, in any other situation, Trey Lance might still have the inside track to prove himself because the 49ers did invest so much in him just 2 years ago. But this is not a usual situation. The number 262 overall pick, the very last pick of the draft, doesn't usually capitalize on an opportunity to usurp the number 3 overall pick, which is what Trey Lance is. But that's exactly what Brock Purdy did last season. Not only did it get to Purdy playing games, and it took a couple injuries to both Lance and Garoppolo to get there, but Purdy also balled out when he was in there. He was undefeated up until he got hurt against the Philadelphia Eagles. So because of that, you've got this whole wrench thrown into the Trey Lance opportunity, and now he's looking up at Brock Purdy. Doesn't mean that he can't make up that ground. Kyle Shanahan himself said so, but now all of a sudden pick number 262 is ahead of Trey Lance. But to make the situation even more complicated, pick number 262 is out because he tore his elbow in the NFC Championship game. So that's, right here. It's a situation of peak nuance. That's all you can really say about this 49ers QB situation. It's a situation of peak nuance. And if we ask how real Lance's shot of actually grabbing that QB1 spot is, it's very real. You heard Kyle Shanahan talk. Shanahan hasn't lied about this QB position. As much as people want to say, oh, Kyle Shanahan's misdirecting us. No, you misdirect yourselves by not being smart consumers of information. Shanahan has been very straightforward about this quarterback situation. And right now he's saying that this is anybody's game, as it should be. Anybody's game with the guy higher up on the pecking order due to past performance and Brock Purdy having the inside track. But that inside track can disappear really, really quickly because Trey Lance has the highest ceiling. Darnold has a high ceiling too, but I would say that Trey Lance probably has the highest ceiling out of all 3 of the 49ers quarterbacks. Hasn't been around nearly as long as Sam Darnold, so still probably a little bit more untapped potential. Has a bigger arm than Brock Purdy. Has more straight line speed. Now, we can't take away from Brock Purdy's short area quickness. He's got a faster 10-yard split than Trey Lance. So don't sleep on Brock Purdy there. But I think from an offensive ceiling standpoint, there's a reason why Trey Lance was drafted number 3, and there's a reason why Brock Purdy was drafted at number 262. And that is, there's a little bit more to give there physically from Trey Lance, although we will say that Brock Purdy was underrated in that regard. So the main thing is that Shanahan still believes in the ceiling, and Trey Lance is going to have a shot to do something this offseason about that, to show the 49ers, wait, you drafted me to be this guy. I could still set myself on the trajectory to be that guy, to be him, if you will. Him. Everybody likes to say he's him. Well, we'll see if Trey Lance is him moving forward. If he's not, well, the number 262 pick is another option for the 49ers. Sam Darnold, another option for the 49ers. Now you could see why they're stacking the QB room, right? Because you're not sure about Lance. If you're not sure about Purdy and you're not sure about Darnold, the best course of action is to bring in all 3 of them and hope that the percentages work in your favor. Because you're not going to be able to pick up somebody like Aaron Rodgers. And even if he did, he's probably toward the end of his career. You're trying to set yourself up for a future at the quarterback position. Well, the 49ers have 3 darts, and they're going to throw all 3 of them at the target, and they hope that one lands darn close to the bullseye this offseason. All right. I think it's time for 49ers Q&A. How about you? A lot of comments. Let's get some questions in here on this beautiful Wednesday afternoon. I am in Nashville. While I wait for some questions, I will pop open this on the screen. This was the article. I talked about it we did some sightseeing today, and I talked about it from the Parthenon here in Nashville. But if you need another look at the article, inside Steve Wilkes' crash course on the 49ers defense and the history behind it, I will copy and paste that link and put it in the chat section. Go ahead and subscribe to The Athletic. I believe $2 a month right now, so you can go ahead and see it. Mike says, post your questions. Yes, Trey Lance will be a quarterback at tight end. Although last year they announced that this was going to be the case, and then he didn't show up. Something came up for Trey Lance, schedule conflict. So much for the George Kittle doesn't like Trey Lance. George Kittle runs tight end U, and he's invited Trey Lance to be a QB at tight end U now in 2 straight seasons. So I think, and he got him a nice birthday cake too. So I think we could put that really stupid rumor to rest. That's going to be here in Nashville in about a month, a little bit more than a month, end of June. Do I believe that Jalen Graham will make the 53? It's another deep position group, but he could be a huge factor on special teams. I mean, he could be a big factor in coverage too. 4'6", 40, long linebacker, built from the Fred Warner mold. He's going to have to compete in training camp, but you could see if D. Winters and Jalen Graham both ball out, that's bad news for players like Demetrius Flanagan-Foles, right? You can't carry him if both Graham and D. Winters make the team. So it's going to depend on what happens this offseason, but the 49ers have hope that both of them can step up and really impress them. But as late draft picks, they really are going to have to impress them to make the roster. Yeah, Kittle didn't invite Darnold. He might hate Sam Darnold not coming to tight end U. Sucks for Sam, doesn't it? Brock did not win the job last year. No, if Brock won the QB1 job, Kyle Shanahan would have announced it at this point. Brock was really good last year. That's great. He also tore his elbow in the last game, and we don't know if he's going to be healthy in week 1. What Brock earned last year was the inside track. He's the leader in the clubhouse. But football teams compete. Good football teams especially compete. Steve Young and Joe Montana competed. And Joe Montana had Super Bowls under his belt. Kyle Shanahan would be foolish to say, Brock Purdy's our undisputed quarterback number 1. He could be honest, which is what he and John Lynch have been, and saying that Brock Purdy's the leader in the clubhouse. He's the favorite, but he hasn't won anything, nor should he have been able to win anything because OTAs haven't even started. Training camp hasn't even started, and Brock Purdy is still out hurt. It's way too early for me to answer a question like this. If Brock Purdy feels he's ready week 1, do you think the team doctors remain cautious and hold on the sideline? It's a case-by-case thing. The doctors and the trainers, they're going to evaluate Brock Purdy's health. And they're going to say, do you have a chance of re-injuring this? Is it higher now than it would be in 2 weeks? If that answer is yes, then of course they're going to think about holding him on the sideline. But if it's not, if he's fully healthy and he's ready to go, well, if he's the best option, the 49ers will toss him out there. Hypotheticals like this, I think, need to take into account that these are case-by-case situations, and we don't know what the case is going to be in a few months. Do I think any quarterbacks get a captain badge this year? Probably not, because they're going to determine that at training camp. So, I don't think the QB position is going to be determined at training camp. So that doesn't seem like something that will happen unless one of these guys blows everybody away in the offseason. I think it's more Danny Gray against Chris Conley and not Danny Gray against Tay Martin, because Conley is an absolute burner that they signed in free agency. Gray plays that burner role. I think they're only going to take one pure speed wideout on the 53-man roster, so it might be those two guys against each other. Eddie, smart comment. The NFL is very unpredictable. Only time will tell how difficult the 49ers schedule will really be this season. We do know that it's going to be difficult from a rest perspective. -20 net rest days, which is downright insane. We did the show on that yesterday. But as far as difficulty in terms of opponents, yes, you're right. We're not going to know that for a little while. Just to use one famous example, when Steve Young was brought in to challenge Joe It took Joe's game to new heights. That's exactly right. Again, football's a meritocracy. People don't like to grasp this, especially for some reason. There's a weirdness about the quarterback position where people want a team to pick one and only one. And I get it. You do that if you have one of the true franchise guys, if you have Patrick Mahomes on your team. But when you don't, when nobody has fully proven themselves, that position needs to be open to just as much of a competition as every single other position. You would be stupid to not open it up. You'd be stupid to not sign as many capable arms as possible to allow such a competition to happen. And that's what the 49ers are doing. Yeah, I didn't think that Louis Riddick said, did he say anything crazy? He said the 49ers need to stay healthy. And he said that Sam Darnold has a chance to beat out Trey Lance, and Brock Purdy, because Brock Purdy's hurt. All those things are true. I mean, talking heads are just recycling different points this offseason, and then Twitter and YouTube just react to them like it's some kind of new and controversial statement when it really isn't, which is why I try to sit here and just make calm sense of everything. Because again, this is my big thing from this offseason. If you would have just turned off the internet in February after the NFC Championship game and turned it back on right now and didn't see all the crap that was flying around, you would have been in the same exact spot. You would have said, oh, Brock Purdy, he's recovering. Great. Trey Lance, oh, yeah, the 49ers don't know what they have yet, but he's going to have a shot this offseason. Oh, look, they signed Sam Darnold just as we all expected they would sign somebody this offseason. They told us they were going to sign a veteran this offseason, and people still act shocked when they went out and got the best possible option at that right price point in Sam Darnold. People still act not only shocked, they act offended that they got Sam Darnold, even though that was the only logical move from a business standpoint that the 49ers could have made. So there's so much fake drama out there. It's ridiculous. So much fake drama. And one of these things, Mike points out that Louis Riddick didn't say anything crazy today. I was on the Rich Eisen show. He didn't. He's been saying what everybody's been saying here for months, and it's repackaged to be something controversial. It really is enough to pull your hair out. It is wild covering the 49ers in the offseason. Trey or Lance? Well, I think he goes by both, right? His name is Trey Lance. How would I compare this season's secondary to previous seasons? That's a good question. It's worth opening up the 90-man depth chart. Why don't we get to work here? So the 49ers secondary this year, I think front line, they're really good. I really like Charvarius Ward. I think people are sleeping on Diamador Lenore. I think that both of those guys were awesome in the NFC Championship game against Philadelphia, and it's not being talked about enough. I think Isaiah Oliver is a free agent that has a really good resume of tape, and he's going to be an upgrade over Jimmy Ward at the nickelback spot. And obviously, you have Hufanga and Gibson, who are amongst the two best safeties in the game last year. Front line, really nice. It's the depth. It's the depth that I would be worried about. What's Darrell Luter Jr. going to look like? We don't know yet. Rookie. What's Samuel Womack going to look like in year two? Good special teams player last year. Not great on defense, but yeah, you get it. 5th round pick. You build in some developmental time. Ambry Thomas, is he going to bounce back from a tough year two? That might be the hinge point, because you're going to need depth in the secondary. If you want to compare it to previous seasons, they didn't have depth in the past, right? In 2021, they didn't have depth, and it was a disaster. They might have depth, but the depth has to prove itself this year. All right, everybody. Thanks for joining. Hopefully I answered all relevant questions here. Quarterback position, fascinating stuff. But hopefully that breaks it down with Trey Lance, because it is a nuanced situation with him for sure. All right, we'll talk to you a little bit later today. Everybody, take care.